Welcome, everyone, to Humanity's Destiny, our sixth class of the semester. And what we're going to do today is we're going to finish off this idea of sustaining it, which we began last week. But then the conversation around optimists and pessimists and how you see the future became a little more involved, which was great. But I wasn't able to really give you some critical information about sustainability. And so I'm going to do that. And then we're really going to jump into the main part of today's class is supposed to be on Together on Earth, or the future of freedom. Now, these are two very relevant topics in terms of what's happening in the world at this moment. And I'm going to address two critical events that are unfolding just south of the border right now that matter a lot. But we could also look at what's happening in Canada too. It's just that in the US right now, the reigning democratic superpower in the world, there is a very interesting question to be asked about freedom and democracy and the future. And if you've been watching the news, when it comes to sustainability, environmental sustainability, there is something happening off the coast or on the coast of Florida as we speak that is historic in its proportions in terms of the impact of climate change on the environment. So this whole question of sustainability today we're going to address in more detail, actually, by taking these two classes that I was planning to do separately and sort of collapsing them into one, sustaining it and Together on Earth. It works well, because the question we can ask today is, when we talk about sustaining it, we are talking about the impact that humans are having on the environment, and can we sustain human progress on planet Earth, or are we going to wreck the natural world at the same time? That's the environment. Can we sustain freedom? Can we sustain democracy? Well, you might think that's a pretty obvious question in terms of its answer, and you would say, well, of course. No, actually, we have a big problem in the world. And I want to alert you to something that we will touch on a little bit later today in the lecture part. There is an election that's about to happen in the United States in early November, which is being considered perhaps the most consequential general election in the history of the American Republic. And I will explain why it's so historic, but there is a lot of talk today about whether the idea of democracy can actually survive into the future. You might think it's so obvious, it will. I'm going to show you today why we have to be very careful. And I'm going to alert you to one thing. And in a moment, actually, could we just bring up from the doc the picture of Donald Trump and Elon Musk? Now, I just want to alert you to something. The richest person in the world, who owns a lot of things, we can talk, and is staking his future on space exploration, has publicly declared himself a very enthusiastic supporter of Donald Trump. Now, what does that mean? Well, we will get to that later. He is offering money right now, $47, to anybody who will vote for Trump. You know why it's 47? Trump 45. He was the president, the 45th president. Donald Trump wears a hat. It says Trump 45, Trump 47. He was the 45th American president. He believes he will be the 47th. He's going to win the election. We're talking about a convicted criminal who is potentially going to be elected. He was convicted of crimes in a New York court of a jury, an independent jury. I will touch on this, but I just want to alert you to the fact that freedom and democracy are at stake in November, and we need to understand why. It's not unusual. There's a long history in the world, in world societies, of authoritarianism. If we look at the 20th century, for example, which was an age of great revolution in the world in terms of changes, we saw a communist revolution in Russia and China that's still ongoing, and that led to strong men in power. We have seen, for example, in other revolutions that have taken place in the 20th century politically, that there has been a drift in human society away from freedom and democracy and towards authoritarianism. And this is deeply rooted in the human story. So we need to understand these things today. Can we sustain our remarkable progress in human civilization, which has led to so much technological growth, but also environmental destruction? And can we sustain the remarkable democratic growth that's happened too, and human rights, when there's a drift happening towards authoritarianism? I will try and help you to understand this. It's going to be a hard class because you're going to be exposed to some pretty difficult truths about what's happening in the world. But at the same time, I am a great believer that as long as we can face the most dark, difficult, troubling, imponderable things, and we're unafraid to face them, we can start to talk about a way forward, and we can start to look at where things might get better. But if we can't talk about them, we can't articulate the problem, and it just exists as this fear and funk, and everybody's, concerned, then it just gets worse. So you have to be able to talk about these things, and you have to get clarity. But you and your generation and the future generations are heading into a future that is extremely complex, very unpredictable, very volatile, ethically challenging. And on top of that, we have, a Nobel Prize winning scientist who just won the Nobel Prize yesterday from University of Toronto, who is the creator of machine learning. University of Toronto computer scientist just won the Nobel Prize for essentially the creation of artificial intelligence that he teaches at University of Toronto. He is now warning the world. He quit Google, where he was working, because he wants to warn people about what artificial intelligence could become. But at the same time, he's also hopeful of how it could be used. But he wants to warn people of its abuse. That's why he quit Google and is speaking out. And he now has won a Nobel Prize for his science. So he's in a great position to speak. How many of you seen the movie Oppenheimer? It's almost identical dilemma that this, I forget his name, the scientist, he's invented this amazing technology, but now he's afraid of how it's going to be used. That's exactly what Oppenheimer did. You remember the story? He creates a nuclear bomb, and then it's a similar thing. So we humans create these things, but then we have to think about, what could be the abuse. And that's where we are today with AI, but we're at the bigger question of, can we sustain this remarkable thing called human progress on planet Earth? And we will have to take a deep dive into politics and the idea of the most driving idea in the human story, and that is the acquisition of human rights, the victory. Humans have won a lot of human rights for themselves in the last centuries, but things are drifting backwards in some ways. We have to be concerned. So I think that this picture is one of the most unnerving pictures I've seen in a long time. And I'll explain why. I think that the marriage between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is potentially a great threat to our freedoms, in spite of what Elon Musk says, that he's trying to make the world more free. And that's what X is. I think we have to temper that and understand that he might want to make himself more rich. And that's all. So, okay, well, I'm just setting things up. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but do you want to ask anything before we get going, Caitlin, or it's Joshua, right? Is it? I have it as Archer, Archer. So you're Archer first, Archer second, like. So just Archer squared. Hey, you're Archer squared. Okay, Archer. I'm happy with Archer if you're happy with it. But I saw Joshua there. I wasn't sure who was this and that. And okay, Archer. Okay. So do you want to say anything to this before we move on? Because we have a big thing to talk about that's happening tomorrow in this. Hello? Go ahead. Just talk into the microphone because I notice in the recordings people are not being heard. Okay, go ahead.
This work?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Did you hear about the lawsuit that Elon's currently facing?
Yeah, I have one in Brazil. Or
The one that's happening in America right now in Texas.
vaguely, can you? What is that one, Hillel?
The game Cards Against Humanity.
What is it?
Cards Against Humanity.
Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, so they have a plot of land in the southern part of Texas near where Trump's wall was supposed to be built.
Yes.
They bought it after Trump won the election, just to, like, piss him off and just to say we like democracy more than like Trump, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Elon was making a new space station there on his own land that he owns, but he was dumping all the waste onto their land and caused ecological damage. So now they're doing, like, how much was the lawsuit? Like a couple hundred million, right?
It was a couple million, but they're saying Elon offered a settlement, but they know they can get way more.
Yeah, so Elon offered a settlement that was half of what the land was actually owed. And he was like, the settlement was basically, I buy the land from you, and which is half the value. And then they're suing him for like 4 times the value of the land right now. All because he wouldn't back down and respect laws.
Well, I'll try and make sure when we discuss this question of freedom and Elon Musk that I do it as a good professor, which is I try and be dispassionate and let you come to your own conclusions and not lecture at you about my views. I have some strong views, but it's important that we look at all perspectives, good and bad. Okay, Faith Lynn, do you want to add anything? He's quite brilliant as an engineer. Let's remember what he's achieved. Yes, they do. He has a huge amount of support, and a lot of it among young people in the world. He is the wealthiest person in the world, and we might say he is globally the most powerful individual in the world right now. He has been helping Ukraine in its war with his satellites. He goes and visits the Chinese premier. He's, greeted by presidents and prime ministers all over the world because of his technology in space, transportation, now, and also embedding chips into the brain called Neuralink. He's a huge technological force in the world. Very important person. Yeah. People, and I respect his technical engineering capabilities. I have a huge, huge question about him as a person.
I was just wondering if like it was equal, like the people who like him versus the people who hate him.
Well, I would just say it's a hard thing to say, but just he's a very important force for the human future. We really have to understand what's going on with this guy and where he's going. He's still young, and he said he wants to have lots of children. He already has something like 9 or 10 from different women. And so, yeah, Faith Lynn, he's a lot of people do like him as a person too. Okay, Colin, yeah.
Um, Elon is also facing a lot of blowback from his Cybertrucks.
Hmm.
Yeah, because people have who got their Cybertrucks have been using them as trucks because they're that's how they're supposed.
Yes, yes.
But um, first of all, they're super not aerodynamic, so they make a massive amount of drag, which just brings down the quality of their batteries and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Makes it a lot harder.
Hmm.
And also, the bed of the truck is too small to do anything like anyone with a normal like F-150 or 350 or whatever
Right.
would normally do. Because one guy actually loaded the bed of his Tesla, whatever model, um, with just a bunch of flat sheets of wood for a construction project, and it bent the frame
Hmm.
of the the tail thing. It's not noticeable from afar, but if you you can see it, and it can't go back.
Can't go back.
Yeah, and someone made a YouTube video on it as well, where they actually compared it to the F-150, and they tried to destroy it compared to each other.
Yes.
Some parts of the Tesla were just glued on. I think so. Yeah, some of the parts of the truck which are not supposed to be were just glued on.
Well, you know, let's stop for a moment just because I want to make sure I stay on focus. We last week I missed a lot of things too, but we will discuss this more and thank you. But let's make sure that I do the attendance as well and stay on track with that so I can do the participation marks properly. So we have Ira is here, Ira, and then it's which Gigi. Oh, you're back. Yeah, Gigi, because I didn't see you last week. Nice to see you again. So Ira, Gigi, Faith Lynn, Archer, Hillel, Colin is here, and then Sangam Grover. Yeah, good. Nice to see you. Yeah, we'll talk a little. And then it's Piyush, Jazeel, and then Alex. Alex, right? Okay. Manjeet, Manjeet, good. And then Romesh, Romesh, yeah, good. Okay, so I'll deal with that later when I do attendance at home. And then Chanel, Ashley, and Abhijit are in the Cosmos. I just wanted to just mention about attendance very briefly, and I just want to make sure I'm heard correctly and there's no misunderstanding. I've noticed a bit of a pattern with all of my classes. I'm not saying it's happening always in this class, but as I've been making sure I stay up to date with all the participation in the class and the grading, etc., I go back and I watch the classes as best I can to check for who's here and who isn't and make sure everyone gets the participation marks accurately. I've noticed something developing with the online synchronous group. So I'm speaking essentially to, Ashley, Abhijit, and Chanel. Okay, and I'm not saying Chanel, Ashley, Abhijit that you're going to do this, but here's what I've just started to notice: some students are coming in online synchronously for a few minutes, and then they post a question in the discussion board and they automatically get the 2 out of 3 for doing that. In other words, they're getting very easy participation marks for dropping into the class and disappearing from the class. I'm just letting everybody know on the recording too that I'm onto this because I can see some are. I'm not saying you're doing this for the in-person group. I can see if you decide you want to leave, I can see you get up and leave. And sometimes students have to leave in person, and they usually tell me before the class. And then sometimes I'll see students get up, halfway through the class because they just have to get to the bathroom. And I'm fine with that because we don't have a break. We end 15 minutes early. So this is not about you, okay? It's just, and it's not about the students watching the recordings because everybody watching the recordings is doing the full question and answer or the reason. It's just this little thing in there, okay? I've noticed. So just, and everybody, I'm onto it. And if you're one of those students who is just dropping in and dropping out, please try and stay a little longer and not try to get the easy marks. It doesn't look very good. I may be wrong about motivation here, why some students are doing that, but it does look to me like some are just, they pop in, a couple minutes, they post a question, and they're gone, and they get the 2 out of 3. That's not very fair to the others, right? Okay. Enough said. Does anybody have anything they want to say to that? Abhijit, Ashley, Chanel, please do. Mayreen will let me know. Otherwise, let's move on because I want to tell you about something that's happening tomorrow in this space that's optional for you, but I've posted it on DC Connect. You want to come up and maybe talk a little bit? I'm going to let Mayreen explain this wonderful movie that we're going to be showing tomorrow here, and then we're going to be having the producer of the movie as a guest in next week's Global Leader class. And it's a really great story. And you may want to come tomorrow afternoon from 3 to 5 p.m. here and watch the movie together. And then you may even want to come to the Global Leader class or online, watch it and meet the producer. But I'll let Mayreen explain more, okay? So I'll run the trailer silently, okay? And while you're talking about it, go ahead, all right?
So tomorrow we're screening the movie Peace by Chocolate. I first saw it when I was at the World Expo in 22, and it was like kind of a premiere. But I had the chance to meet Tarek, who the movie is based on. So this gentleman here, that's the actor, but I had the chance to meet who he plays in real life, and I had the chance to also meet the producer of the movie, Shadi, who will be joining us the next week in person. Um, I really like the movie, and because it talks about like it's based in Canada, because it's Tarek's story here when he moved as a refugee. So I think it's a very interesting film to watch. We're gonna have the screening tomorrow, 3 to 5. We might not start definitely sharp at 3. So if you do want to drop in and just come in, there's gonna be popcorn. So if you wanna just have some freshly popped popcorn and just bring your friends and just have a relaxation time, I guess. Tomorrow it's 3 to 5, and then if you would like to join us next Wednesday in the morning, he's going to be joining us 10:30. So if you don't want to come right in the beginning of the class because it starts at 10 o'clock, you could join us 10:30, and then I guess just come here, just sit down for a little bit. He will be joining us to answer questions about either filmmaking, or if you watched the movie and you had any questions about that, he'll be there to answer all of that. So we've been posting the details on social media. So if you're following us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, uh, we'll post more information there.
It's called Peace by Chocolate, the movie, and it's based on the true story. Are any of you familiar with the online service where you can order this amazing chocolate from this small company in Nova Scotia, and it will be delivered to you, and they make the chocolate, and they've been building a very successful business? Well, turns out that these people were once struggling to live in Syria in the war there, and they embarked on a pretty impressive journey from Syria to get out of the country and came to Canada. Familiar story in Canada. And they built this business together, and it's been very successful. So it's a very Canadian success story. It's a story of immigration and migration. It's a story about our future too on planet Earth, because everybody's moving around a lot and has to adapt and adjust to new places and situations. So Peace by Chocolate, here from 5 p.m. tomorrow. And I haven't seen it. I've just seen parts of it. It looks great. It's won some awards. And you're all welcome, okay? And bring friends or family and whoever you want. And any questions? We good? Okay. One other thing I'd like to show, would you just run the Repair Cafe Hack Lab, one from the DC Connect folder. So I did start to talk about Repair Cafe last week, didn't I? Right? Okay. I'd like to show you now, just to go ahead and just keep the volume sort of lower and run this. This is a Repair Cafe in Toronto, where I took my iPhone and walked around and just captured it on camera. Our plan is to have students organize this in here. So, well, of course, Archer is very interested, and we're going to get you involved with the team and everything. It's coming. But this is what it looks like. This is inside a repair cafe in downtown Toronto a few years ago when I did a little iPhone video. When we talk about sustainability and sustaining it, just I showed you the video last week of sort of one event, but this gives you a more inside view of the energy of what it's like, the variety of things that are brought, and just the general interaction that happens in this one space. I can't wait to see this in here with student fixers and professors and others that you'll be recruiting and over the next few weeks. Out there, coffee going and some pastry, and Wednesday, December the 11th is the plan. Okay, and we're hoping to do it from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. right here. Okay. I just want to check in and see if there are any others that, like Archer, are kind of secret fixers. They really like to fix things, or they love to, they want to understand how things are put together, and or you have something you would like fixed and you'd like to learn how to fix it. You could bring it to that event. So please keep this in mind, okay? I don't want to force anybody. I just want to inspire you to think about this. But it looks like for this class, the person that will be sort of coordinating with this class and others to help bring students together will be Archer. Okay, he's the one who's shown most interest. Okay. She's starting it. Yeah, she just started this morning. We've got the teams going. But look, I just took my iPhone. I did a lot. I do these little videos at every event. I used to make documentaries, so I understand a bit how to do it. So you got to get in really close. This is all with my iPhone. Get in close, capture the audio. But look at all the stuff that's brought in, and I forget his name, the fixer. But you can see the visitors. They sit there and they watch, and lots of clothing stuff is brought. We've got the sewing group there, the jewelers. The human future, it's so complex with more and more technology in our lives. So we've got to understand this tech. Otherwise, it's going to control us. We don't want that, do we? You want to have Elon Musk running everything, and he understands the tech, and you just go on, and have fun, but you don't realize all that information is being taken in by him, and he's the one who knows how to understand. We got to figure out how to understand our machines and fix them ourselves. Anyways, we can freeze there. So that's a little bit of what's coming, and I think we're pretty good. I'm going to give a little lecture in a moment, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear about the first assignment that's been sent in already. I will start marking them shortly. The discussion post, you have a sixth one that's going to be, you'll be posting after this class. Next week is our final class of the first half of the semester, and then the following Tuesday, I'll be issuing a midterm. 40, I think 0.5% of your final grade will be in that midterm. So just be aware, it's important. If you have any questions, you can always email me, okay? So yeah, go ahead. I'm going to actually put up a PowerPoint here. So, okay, great. So I'd like to tell you a bit more about this idea of sustainability when it comes to an environmental perspective. And I want to bring something up for all of you. So here we go. Let me come to my little PowerPoint here that I did some time ago. And let's see if it pops up here properly. Great. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. So I'm going to put the student pod will go over to here. Let's see if I just get this proper student pod. Hold on. So we've got there, and then we'll bring back the notes over here, which is that. Excellent. Okay, and we have, I guess what we can do is we'll leave Piece by Chocolate up there for now. I can't see anybody online right now, but at least you can see this. So I'm going to give you a fairly straight up lecture from the podium as quickly as I can to give you some very basic information, okay? So here we go. How many of you have been following a little bit of the hurricane in Florida right now? Hello, Caitlin, Ida, are you aware of how historic the scale of this is? I'd like to give you one stunning fact that is emerging. I don't know if it's made landfall yet, but for the first time in the history of the planet, as far as we know, the climate scientists are telling us there has never been a tropical storm that has rapidly escalated to a Category 5 hurricane in such a short period of time. One day, it went from a storm to a hurricane that is supposed to bring winds of up to 250 kilometers per hour, that is supposed to bring a storm surge of water coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, something like 15 feet. And that's why the entire city of Tampa and a lot of Florida coast right now, having suffered through another hurricane called Helene recently, is evacuating, and why the politicians are telling the people who are not evacuating, if you stay there when it hits, you will die. So what is this? Why is this event happening? Well, actually, it's because, as you probably know, but some people would still like to say, that when it comes to sustainability, there are some who still question whether climate change is real and whether these things are just nature doing what nature always does. But no, something different is happening. And so I want to explore this idea a little bit more deeply today of why we have come to the conclusion on planet Earth with human civilization, modern human civilization on planet Earth, that we have a very serious issue that we need to grapple with, and we better start doing it soon. This should not be depressing for you. As I present to you some important people and figures, I hope that what you will feel is the inspiration of understanding a problem more clearly. And when you understand it more clearly, you kind of feel like, oh, I can deal with it. Back in the 1960s, the first person who really started to alert us that something was afoot with the chemicals in the world, the pollution in the world, and what it was doing to the environment was a journalist and a writer named Rachel Carson. And her book is a classic called Silent Spring. And it's a great work. She faced a lot of resistance in the early 1960s when she started to tell us that the chemicals that we were using in a lot of our plastics and other products that we were creating actually can cause damage to the environment if they're not stored properly in the earth. They can leak and cause problems with the soil. The pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that were being used for farming had residual impact on the environment and were causing new kinds of damage. and she titled her book Silent Spring, meaning we're entering a period in history where the birds won't be chirping anymore. That's the idea, that we kill nature and it's silent. Let's fast forward a little bit, okay, to the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, what we call this new millennium. We are now in a new 1,000-year period in the story of life on Earth, the story of humanity too. The 2000s, that's a new millennium and a new century. At the end of the 20th century, at this point, when we were entering this new period, there was a study that was published by about 800 scientists from around the world who had been studying this question of human progress and the impact of human civilization on planet Earth. It's called the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And here is a very stunning fact that I really want you to understand about the period of time in which we are all living and what's driving this whole idea of human impact on nature that is causing disruption to the world's ecosystems and natural systems. In this little chart, which the team published, this is called the World Gross Domestic Product. You know what a gross domestic product is? Does anybody know? GDP? When we talk about a national GDP, Yeah. You forget? Okay, that's a start. At least you vocalized it. I forget. Okay, hello? What do you think GDP, gross domestic product, is? Because there's a very important fact that's driving a lot of these problems. Here, I'll turn it on, okay? GDP.
I'm not entirely sure. This is purely off of memory.
Yep.
But I think it's the value of products that's produced by a country and then sold to the rest of the world.
And it can be services, it's goods and services. So it's the stuff that we make and it's the stuff that we do to make money, essentially. So a service, I'm doing a service, teaching. But then I have all these clothes. These are things. So it's a combination of the value of the things that are made and the things that we do, and we put a value on it. And we generally say that a country in the world, when it's talk about the economy, a country is very wealthy and very strong when its GDP is high. It's producing and manufacturing a lot, and people are producing a lot of services. So everyone's aiming for a high GDP. Well, what the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment team did at the end of the 20th century is they came up with a figure for the world gross domestic product. They combined it all together to see what is humanity producing over a certain period of time. So if you look at this chart, world GDP in trillions of dollars, on the horizontal line, that's going back about 1,500 years. That's 500 AD, 700 AD, 1100 AD, up into the 21st century. And then we have on the vertical side, we have the actual value of all of these goods and services. You notice that for hundreds and hundreds of years, 500, 700, 900, world GDP is, as we got the Roman civilization, and Rome eventually falls, and then there's the Middle Ages, and European countries start to form, and then, eventually China grows into a great power. It always was, but even more so. And then, you get India growing, and then you get the two continents, the Afro-Eurasia, everything everything east of the Atlantic Ocean combines with everything west of the Atlantic Ocean. The Americas, they meet, and there's a big trading network that grows, and the Europeans kill all the Aboriginal people, or most of them, in the Americas, and we get tremendous technological growth in the 20th century during that remarkable period when we have the Industrial Revolution that produced many new ways of creating products. And then look at 1900. Here is the remarkable, the world GDP was estimated to be $1 trillion. Then we go up 100 years, and it rises to $52 trillion in 2003. There has never been a more stunning factual picture of how much stuff human beings are producing. And that stuff is everything that we wear, everything that we drive, everything that we use. It's all the products. Well, where are all the ingredients coming from these things? These things just grow on trees? They come from somewhere. And what about the waste that's being produced when we actually begin to invent what's called an internal combustion engine? We did that about 250 years ago. And we figured out that you put oil in that. Oil is just dead stuff in the earth, dead plant matter and dead stuff that's just sort of congealed in the rocks over thousands and thousands of years. You extract that, you process it, you put it into a machine, internal combustion machine, you get an engine running, and then all that creates this carbon dioxide that we never expected. And that starts to create global warming. And we can see in these studies that were done by this team that it's having an impact on the natural systems, on our plants, our trees, on our ecosystems. We're seeing more and more of that stuff being degraded or disappearing. That's the silent spring. This is a very interesting chart of how we watch the level of carbon dioxide rising in the atmosphere. That's the level in parts per million of carbon dioxide that is coming from the cars and planes and other machines that use oil and gas to run those machines. The waste is carbon dioxide. Where does all that go? Well, what we see is after 1954, 55, in that 50s, after the Second World War, there was a tremendous growth. It's called the Great Acceleration. So much happened after the end of the Second World War in the victory that the Western world had, particularly the United States, over Germany and Japan and fascism, that there was a great growth in a lot of products that we were using. And this starts to lead to a dramatic rise in the levels of CO2 or carbon dioxide. What's taking place in Florida is a direct result of this. There's a marine, it's the water in the Gulf of Mexico has warmed up. It's called a marine heat wave. The water is warming, and there are other things that I can't even explain to you yet. I'm still learning about it. But when you really begin to understand the effect of the warming that has happened on water, not just on the air, but water absorbs all this carbon dioxide and warms up, this leads to the kind of dramatic, volatile weather patterns that we see. When we talk about the warming of the planet, this is a very interesting chart too, that shows us, looking back over an extended period of time, the global surface temperature going back to 1860. Watch how you begin to see, slowly but surely, some years it rises and falls, but then eventually through the 20th century, we're seeing every year gradually the warming of the planet is happening. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not pseudoscience. This is real science by scientists who've studied this closely and want to show us something that's very hard for humans to grapple with. If you want to talk seriously about humanity's destiny, you need to talk about the big picture. The big picture is the planet. Most of us go about our lives and our day thinking about the things around us, getting tests done, meet our friends. You know, we've got a lot of responsibilities. Sometimes we think of the planet and, you know, play video games with people from other parts of the world, but really thinking about the planet in this way, like an astronaut where you're looking back, it's very important because you start to see something happening on planet Earth as a result of humans. We're all humans together. Humans have created an amazing global technological civilization that is leading to longevity in our lives. It's leading to all of these wonderful tools that we have that keep us stimulated and connected, and it's just wonderful. But these things have consequences. For example, for example, where does the battery come from that drives your iPhone? Or here, where does the lithium come from? We touched on that last week, right? The Congo. Where does all the paper come from that we use for our hard copies? It comes from trees and logging. Things have to be cut down. Where does the dye come from to dye these pants? And think about, where do all these things come from? And are we depleting those things now to such an extent? But more than that is the waste that we're putting into the atmosphere. Here is a wonderful look at volatile weather. This tells you something about what's happening in the United States right now. Flood events per decade, broken down by continent. Asia, Americas, Africa, Europe, 1950s. Flood events per decade. Notice something going on? Asia, Americas, Europe, Africa. You can see that in Europe, they've had the least amount, but Asia has had the most. And of course, where did we see the tsunami in Thailand? In Japan, there was tsunami. I mean, the Pacific Ocean, all those Asian countries along the Pacific Ocean. The great acceleration. We are living at this time. The world's natural systems are being impacted by humans in ways that we never really understood until now. These were the conclusions of this study, the main findings. Humans have radically altered the ecosystems in the last 50 years. Changes have brought gains, but at growing costs that threaten achievement of development goals. Degradation of ecosystems could grow worse, but can be reversed. Workable solutions will require significant changes in policy. For the pessimists last week, they must be overjoyed at this because it confirms that we've got big problems. But not so fast, pessimists. Not so fast. If you think it's really going to get worse and bad, then you don't understand something about humans and the human ability to solve problems. Let me just give you a tiny bit of hope, and then I'm going to move on to the Together on Earth part. I just wanted to touch on just a few very basic introductory facts that we have from good science today about what's happening to this planet as a result of us. And it makes us question whether we can sustain human progress as we know it. We have started to become aware of the problem in much greater ways. Rachel Carson in Silent Spring did a very brave thing with her work. Her life was threatened by many at that time, by oil companies and chemical companies. Just like, for example, have any of you seen the movie The Insider by the person Jeffrey Wiegand, who blew the whistle on the tobacco industry? Any of you know this story? Russell Crowe, good actor, plays this whistleblower who worked for one of the big American nicotine tobacco companies, R.J. Reynolds, I think it was, through the 1950s and 60s. Well, let me just introduce you to some first, and then I'll come back to Jeffrey Wiegand. This is Edward Brzezinski. He's a Canadian photographer. There's a movie based on his work called Manufactured Landscapes that some of you may have heard of. He's a very well-known photographer around the world for his work showing what human industry is doing to planet Earth. Now, what Edward Bertinsky does, and I'll come back to Jeffrey Wiegand in a moment, is he takes these amazing photographs in a very epic way. He was the first to use drones, for example, to get these aerial shots of the scale of human sort of development on planet Earth. This is one of his most famous ones from the tailings from the Sudbury nickel mine in Canada. What he was, what's that? Yes, in Canada, from Sudbury. What he was doing in the Gulf of Mexico, where there was an oil spill, and he tries to show us something that's very difficult for us to visualize. What are we doing to the planet? That's a big thing. But he's been doing this over years as he gets these wide shots. Sometimes they cover an entire wall. And you see amazing pictures of, what we're doing with our industry. His mining photographs, huge, where you see a mine and you can see the extent of the way humans get into a mine to pull things out, and you see the extent of destruction to that natural thing because of human industry. Well, I want to give you some good news about the future in terms of sustaining it. This is a picture Edward Bertinsky took to kind of just drive home the idea of, look at urban development. What happened to nature? It's way off the back. Humans pushed it all away. We started doing that 15,000 years ago. In the Americas, for example, there used to be these huge giant sloths and saber-toothed tigers and huge animals that used to roam this area 15,000 years ago or so. But then humans came along, created civilization, and we killed all the big megafauna. Have you ever wondered why there's so many few big animals anymore? Well, the mastodons, we killed them. It's called the megafaunal extinction. Mega is big and fauna is animal. So humans have parked themselves on planet Earth. They keep developing more and more, and as a result, they're clearing away everything else for their own needs. And Edward Bertinsky has been trying to show us that. In other words, here is a human who is visually showing us the problem. He's making us aware of the problem. That's a good thing. He's making us aware of the scale of the problem. That's a very good thing. The magnitude of what we are doing to the planet is very difficult for you to visualize. Most of us don't have the patience, maybe even the interest, to use their imagination and think, what's happening to the planet? It's too big. But he is helping us to see it. That's a sign of progress. The second thing, it's not great news. Here's the second thing, okay? I'm going to try and give you good news, but I wish I could give you better news. Let me come back to Jeffrey Wiegand. Rachel Carson and Edward Bertinsky are two humans, smart, patient individuals who are looking closely at a problem and trying to explain it to us. Well, not too long ago, most people were smoking. You may not think of it that way anymore, but in my generation, most of us are smoking. I used to smoke a pack of Rothmans a day through my 20s and 30s. Does anybody smoke here? No, exactly. Hell no. Maybe. What's that? Yeah, hell, exactly. Hell no. That's an easy thing to say. When I was growing up, there'd be ashtrays everywhere. You walk into a bank, there'd be ashtrays, and it smelled of nicotine. It was that stale smell. you wait in an elevator and people are having cigarette and you put out your cigarette and then before you get on the elevator. Everything had a stink and you get used to it. In fact, I couldn't wait to have my cigarette and my cappuccino in the morning. Along comes one person of a few. There have been a few Jeffrey Wiegons, but Jeffrey Wiegon comes along. He was a senior scientist with one of the biggest tobacco companies in the world, R.J. Reynolds, I think it was. Produced Winston cigarette and others. Do you know the movie and the story? Okay, well, it's a good movie if you see it. But to know more about the story, too, Jeffrey Wiegon had a hard time believing that cigarettes could be good for you. This is what companies used to say. Do you know that in the early days of the Tour de France in the 20th century, the cyclists would be smoking because they thought it was okay? I remember very distinctly when I was growing up playing hockey, and I had to, it's a long story, I had to play Peter Puck. He was a clown figure for Hockey Night in Canada. And I was dressed up as a big clown, and I went to the hockey rink where they had a special thing called showdown between periods on Hockey Night in Canada. And you would see this, the great hockey players competing for best slap shot, fastest skater, in between periods before there was Don Cherry and all these other guys. And then there would be this clown who would come on the ice dressed as a puck, skating around to get the crowd all entertained at this showdown event. That was me, Peter Puck. And I got to meet my idols, Guy Lafleur, Dennis Potvin, other stars, and my shock when I saw Guy Lafleur, the great Guy Lafleur of the Montreal Canadiens, one of the great hockey players, smoking away here, and Dennis Potvin and others. Jeffrey Wiegon said, this doesn't make sense, and then he began to release studies that had been done internally. No, this is relatively new. There were minor warnings when we started to, in the early parts of the 1930s and 40s, just, it may be dangerous to your health when we started to become aware a little bit more, but no. Early on it was. Yeah, early on it was. Then when we started to learn that there was health hazard, then it was marketed as it's cool. But Jeffrey Wiegon showed something. He's called a whistleblower. What is a whistleblower? Yeah. Think about the courage it takes. What's that? It didn't end up so well for Jeffrey Wiegon. But he showed the world that the tobacco company that he was working for not only knew all the years that it was marketing these cigarettes that they were unhealthy, but withheld that information from the public, but then he saw in the studies that were done internally that the companies were adding things to the filters of the cigarettes to make them more addictive. So on top of the nicotine, the companies were putting stuff into the filters so that you would smoke them more. And when he released that to the public, oh boy, did they go after him. It's kind of like what happened earlier this week when Bob Woodward, one of the great journalists of our time, Bob Woodward, the Washington Post, who, along with his colleague Carl Bernstein, was the famed Watergate. Do you know the story of Watergate at all? That brought down the American president, Richard Nixon, in the 1970s, Watergate. Well, Bob Woodward just published a new book this week called War. And you know what he revealed? Donald Trump has been talking to Vladimir Putin many times since he's been out of office. 7 times, as a matter of fact. And do you know what Donald Trump's spokesman said? This is such false information. It's so false I wouldn't even wipe my butt with it. That's all he can say. Attack, attack, attack. When somebody comes out with new information. Well, Jeffrey Wiegand faced attack, attack, attack after the tobacco companies making his life, threats on his life. But he still made sure that more information was published because the public interest was what mattered most. That should give us hope. That there are people like this, Gigi, out there. Maybe you're one of them. You're not afraid to live by your conscience. Do you know what it has been said that should be the 11th commandment of the 10 commandments? And then I'm going to stop. And we need to talk a little bit about politics and question. Thou shalt not be an innocent bystander. I think it's in every one of you if you're prepared to face pain of retribution and hatred of others. I think it's in every one of you to do the brave thing and speak the truth when you know what you're saying is true and right, and what is being said against you is wrong and cheap and violent. Anytime somebody attacks you violently, in my opinion, they don't have a leg to stand on. All they can do is be violent. They can't reason. They don't have the facts. So they attack. In this time when sustainability is such a serious problem and it's so complex, I personally want to make sure that you understand that there are human beings always who are brave. And I think it's probably in all of you to be brave too. And that's how, no matter what happens going forwards, how difficult and dark things may become, there are going to be people always who are ready to stand. And as William McNeill, one of our great world historians, said, in war, we see the worst of humanity, but we also see the best. Yes. Oh, microphone. I want to make sure. Gigi, you're, yeah. Faithlyn? Yes.
I'm just wondering if we are putting our hope and faith into more brave people coming to speak out about, the world's biggest issues. A lot of people don't care. Like for even the cigarettes. Like I guess when you were growing up, there was no labels on the packs. Or
Just
anything.
minor thing, Gigi. You know, it's harmful for your health.
It's right on the
Now
right
it's-
on the filter
oh,
now.
yeah.
It's right on the
Never.
filter now, and people don't care. I mean, it and it's a weird thing to say. I'll have an occasional cigarette, and I
Yeah.
know it's bad for me. I know that, and I guess I'm
Okay.
not. I guess I know that the previous generation didn't know for a long time, but now our generation knows.
That's right.
Know, and
They
they
know.
still. Even myself, like I'm one of them. Like I still make the choice. Even
Well,
though
we
I
all
know-
have little guilty pleasures. It's
I
okay.
get
We're allowed. We can't. But this is not like a Nazi camp here, where it's. Come on,
But when
we
we
can
think
allow.
about the bigger picture,
Yes.
we still like cigarettes are a minor thing, but when we look at the bigger things, it seems like people still don't care like as much. Not talking about the whole world, obviously people care, but I feel like there's a large majority of people who are like, yeah, that's crazy, but it's not my responsibility, like somebody else would do it. And I think about that as a personal thing, and I wonder, like, small things like recycling. I don't know if anybody knows Durham College doesn't recycle. It all goes to the one.
It does. Landfill?
It goes to
Don't
the
we
one.
do
It
any?
all goes into the same container.
Oh,
So
really?
there's no actual recycling going on, and I think about how recycling is a big
Yeah.
part of our environmental issues.
Yeah.
And how do I recycle better as a person when everywhere around me is like pretending? You know what I mean? Like what can we do as individuals to be the change that we want to see, when I feel like all of these things are so like you have to be a really powerful person in the world to make change?
It's a great question. I'd like to answer it before we go to Archer, okay? Is it, yeah. First, Gigi, I'm going to give you something a little difficult to think about, but I think it will make sense to you. It sounds to me like you are a person who cares. Well, if you care, isn't it unfair to say that everyone else doesn't? Aren't they capable? Isn't Ida caring and Archer caring and Colin caring? Maybe they are.
But I'm not saying these.
I know you aren't, but you're painting a broad brush. You're saying everybody doesn't care, but I kind of care. There's something wrong with this
No.
world. Everybody doesn't care, and I'm the only one who cares. That's how it kind of sounds to me.
Does anybody else get that impression? I'm not trying to come off that way.
Maybe I'm wrong. Let's ask. They may not want to say something because they'd rather.
It's okay. Either
But
way,
yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean,
wondering.
it's all right. But I had the impression, because I've had this discussion with students before, so I may be wrong. But I interpreted that of, well, I get it, but everybody else seems to not get it. And so the world is going to hell because nobody really cares. But I do. But that's the problem with the world. Only I get it. Is that a fair assessment of what she said, Colin? Well, recycling, for example, or let's talk about recycling, because that's a very good piece of information that you gave about Durham College, but also about you as a recycler, okay?
I just want to say that I don't think I'm the only one who cares about the problems in the world. Definitely not.
Yes.
I think a lot of people do care, but I wonder if it's enough to make a change. And I'm wondering how us individuals that do care, how we can start to make change, because I personally feel like to make change in the world, you have to be a very powerful person who has a lot of influence, like Elon Musk.
Sure.
I'm sure that we all care about, the humanity and the planet, everybody in this room. I'm not the only one who
Yeah.
does.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just wondering how we can, as individuals, make small change, like recycling. Like what do I do to make sure that it doesn't end up at the landfill? You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, there are lots of little things you can do in the course of a day to do your part in terms of the bigger things. In time, perhaps as you start to become more professional and you have more influence, you will be able to have greater influence, but you can still have influence on your own day in terms of how you dress, what things you use, how you dispose of your waste, what you eat, and how you treat people. All of these things are doing your part. And as Mahatma Gandhi said, and always talk about him, be the change. That's enough. Just be the change.
Can I ask what made you think that I don't think anybody else cares in the world, or I only care, or I care more? Like, what did I say that made you think that?
Because I've heard others say, nobody seems to care. But yet, when that person speaks, they seem to care a lot. And it makes me think, well, if they care, surely others care too. So that the assumption you're making of other people not caring may be wrong. They may care too, and they may be trying to in their own way. But these are difficult problems. And it's going to take quite a long time to resolve them. But if we can focus on them, there once was a big hole in the ozone layer. It's been fixed. We humans started to figure out how to reduce the amount of chlorofluorocarbons going into the atmosphere because we cared. We can fix a lot of things if we come together. But we have to start somewhere, and you start in your own life by just doing what you can and being consistent and staying true to that. Not one day this, one day that, but just start to get more consistent. And then maybe get more involved. Politics, causes. Get involved in the next election. Pick a candidate that you like. Go door to door and try to get people to support that candidate. I mean, there are things you can do more and more, but you can definitely do things in the course of your day. Like, if you really believe that organic food, like a banana peel and an apple core and an orange peel and an eggshell, should not be thrown into a landfill, then when you can, keep it with you, and when you get home, start your own compost. And there you go. You're doing it.
I guess so.
Sure. Faithlin?
The ozone layer?
Yes, we did.
When?
Well, think about it. Yeah. Well, yes, 70s. And then in I think it was the 80s or the 90s, the American president, Ronald Reagan, and the British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, got very tuned in because she was a scientist by training, and he loved horses and nature, and he understood. So they came together, and they did what everyone thought was impossible. And there was an agreement called the Montreal Protocol, I believe. Montreal. And we have been fixing the problem. Yeah. It's a success story. It's very important.
I would also like to talk about what Gigi said. In my perspective, I think she was more talking about like how you can inspire change in people around you when you feel like you're weak and powerless. And to me, it's letting people know your cause, because like I feel like most of the people who do care about recycling didn't know that Durham College doesn't.
I didn't know. I thought we were doing something, and I'm sure. So there's no separation at all here of recycle, landfill, and it's certainly not organic. You can go to University of Toronto or downtown Ryerson and others, or not Ryerson, Toronto Metropolitan University, and you see the separation.
All the separation, like
Yeah.
in the boxes or whatever, all goes to the same thing.
That's not good.
Where?
I'm gonna maybe talk to some people around here to figure out what.
The carbon emission and the landfill, I would believe, though we as individuals.
Oh, give Jesse a microphone. So make sure. Colin, go ahead, and then we'll come online. And yeah, good. So, go ahead, Jazeel.
Though I believe as a carbon emission and landfill, I believe we as individuals are responsible. In the end of the day, we actually are, how should I say, less than like 20% of the reason the landfill and the carbon emissions are increasing. I believe it's it's
Go on. Just want to drive the point home here. We're
I would
coming to
say-
this, and then we're going to conclude the class. But this I find about as scary as
most
you're
of
going to
the
get.
wastes and most of the carbon emissions are coming from the transportations, like the huge oil containers, the factories and the coal mines, China and its mega factories, USA and its other factories and oil shipments. I believe these are the major producers of these waste and carbon emissions. Though I believe we as an individual can make an impact through, and how should I say, impact through proper waste disposals and managing ourselves.
Yeah.
But I believe people make like very less effort, or not effort, I would say, target these areas, and we mostly focus on ourselves. Like we blame on the people who
Well, here we go. I'm going to see we're drifting into the same place that I thought you were going. People are generalizing about everybody, but you're not like that, are you? Are you, Jazeel? You're not like all these other people, are you?
No, I'm
You're
not
kind of
like that.
different, right? Or are you like all those others? People.
blaming, but we, in a general sense, do help the companies power them. But in a sense, we, instead of blaming ourselves on certain areas, we actually, how should I say, blame the regular people, saying, "Oh, they are not throwing the garbage properly.
Yeah.
Oh, these are not properly disposed. We just burning these garbages. We're throwing in the water."
Okay.
Though we, in fact, contribute like very comparably less compared to the big factories or the transport.
This is true. The companies are contributing more. But can we write something on? Would you be able to write in just a really big? I want, and then we're going to come to you, and then we're going to go to the picture here, and I'm going to just touch on freedom and democracy, and then we're going to conclude. Please write very large on one card. Each and every one of us always has a choice. You have a choice of what to buy, what to drive, what to use, who's going to be your friend, and who's not. If you decide that you do not like what Elon Musk represents for humanity, don't buy a Tesla. Don't go on X. Look elsewhere for inspiration when it comes to space exploration. There are other people competing to do the same thing. Investigate whether it's a good thing to have a brain chip inserted into your brain. It's called Neuralink. Is coming. You can choose, and if more and more people choose not to do these things, eventually it will have an impact on him and his bottom line. But you have a choice. You always have a choice. We all have a choice. Yes.
I
Oh,
don't think that I'm different, and that's
oh,
what
that's
I
honest.
was
Say
for
that.
the first
Okay,
time.
yes, over the watching the recording. That's very honest and very fair, and I may have been wrong in
You,
what I said.
you just want me to repeat myself?
Please repeat what you just
Okay.
said.
I do think that I am one of the people who knows when there's a problem or when something's dangerous or unhealthy and continues to do that thing knowing that it's wrong or dangerous or unhealthy.
Exactly.
Okay, so I don't want to think that I'm not like the other people or I care more. I'm on the same level as everybody else. I'm just talking about these things.
And why? Well, that's a bigger discussion. Why do you keep doing those things, Gigi? And
That is a bigger discussion.
it's about a little bit of self-control, self-regulation, a little bit of mindfulness to not do the thing you know is wrong and do the thing that's right. Who's that guy who sings, a British guy, Ed Sheeran, Bad Habits? Bad Habits. What's the song go? You know, you keep doing those things. Well, you know, how old are you? Yeah, so it's give it time. But don't be so hard on yourself, Gigi, that you know life is miserable. You know, we're it's going to take some time for humanity to deal with these things, but we have to move in this direction, the better direction, and we are gradually. That's what I'm trying to introduce you to. People who are trying to take us in that direction, slowly but surely. Growing pains, maybe, as one student once said. Humanity is in a period of growing pains, learning that our progress has consequences. Okay, who's next? Archer or Hillel? Yeah? Okay. Where should it go? Well, today I wanted to review our environmental sustainability, and it went on a little longer, and it's in part because I always try to seize a little bit of momentum with students if there's some good comments, and also because of the hurricane that is so historic. It's happening in real time right now, Colin. But let's start. We will touch on one or two important points around democracy and freedom, and then we're going to pick this up next week. And but we should conclude soon. Go ahead.
An engineer asked an AI
Well, yeah. Can you get thanks, Archer? Yeah. Oh, can you? How do we get that up on the? Just a second. We can try something on the fly here. Screen. You know what we'll do? No, what? Thank you. Okay. Well, why don't you tell Maureen so I can focus on this? Let's get this up on the board or on the dashboard or whatever. Let's look at it. Okay. We can touch on Elon and Donald later. I do. Okay. Wow. Santol. Is it category 6 now? Is that true? I'm just coming to your live chat comment now. Could you update us in the live chat? Okay. Santol, are you still with us? Yes, you are. I think you are. So please put down that cigarette that you're smoking. Yeah. Okay. Santol is reporting in the live chat that the category 6 designation may have been given right now, which would be like lunacy. But we'll see. I don't know. He's not sure. He's gonna. Okay. Oh, great. Great, Maureen. So, okay. So what is this? Can you explain? What is this sustainable? Is this sustainable architecture? Oh, microphone. Make sure.
Actually designed not this design. This is an AI generated. I
Okay.
believe Singapore has done a similar project with the Chinese. Is it Singapore or Thailand? I don't remember, but I believe the same project is being built somewhere in
Okay.
Southeast Asia.
So what is this? Could someone explain what we're looking at exactly?
From what I can tell, is this is buildings that they don't look it. They look like they're abandoned and stuff. But actually, what it is they're fully furbished. They're just in the future. So where we have incorporated plant life into our buildings to make it so that we're not just tearing down the foliage and just putting up buildings that don't do anything. We're putting up buildings that still connect with nature and protect
Sure.
the ozone and all that stuff.
Sure.
It's coexisting.
And what
say.
do we know what materials are being used?
No clue.
On the
It's
scene?
AI. So it's
Yeah,
just
it's AI.
just a
Okay.
picture. But if we could go in this direction where we incorporate plants into buildings and plants and cleaner energy into a lot
Yeah.
more things, it would help.
Well, I'm going to say that I'm going to leave the political Together on Earth lecture and discussion to next week. Let's finish this off in the next few minutes. This is the end of our sustainability, environmental sustainability part of the course, and make sure we've covered it, and then we're going to conclude, okay? So, Faith, then just grab the microphone, all right? So everybody can hear, and make sure that you have said what you need to say and that we have an understanding of the critical issues here. Great. Oh, is this the pavilion? Which 2020? Ah, okay. This was the last expo. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Do you know there's a movement towards using wood more and more in buildings instead of concrete, cement, and the standard steel that's used? And there's a building being erected in Toronto right now, right downtown, which is going to be the tallest wood freestanding structure in Canada. It would be a very interesting reflection if somebody wanted to take this on for their second assignment or even their final assignment of why is humanity not using more wood in its buildings? Wood is not only sustainable, but it's also nourishing. When you go into a building and there's more wood, you feel better.
I believe
Think about it.
I believe it's due to the
Wood,
light.
wood does more, and it just calms us down more than these kinds of surfaces do. That has been studied. Why don't we use wood more? Is it just too difficult, too expensive,
It's
doesn't
it
last?
wood rots.
Wood rot?
The wood rots, and its life is very short.
But there are new ways of preserving it, apparently, for longer periods. Preserve, cover it, coat it. What's that? Well, guess who figured that out? The indigenous peoples, and they built amazing canoes and cedar, beautiful cedar canoes, and you can definitely do that. Well, listen, I'll let you go a little earlier today. I think we probably have covered this as best we can for you to understand that we need to think hard about how we're going to go forwards and still have what we have, all the nice things, but protect our resources. And let's check with Santol and see, it's been downgraded to a category 4. Well, that means it'll just be 190 kilometers an hour winds instead of 200. It's still pretty significant. Okay, so listen, everybody, if you have any questions, come see me. You know the 6th discussion post, what you need to do. The 2nd assignment is due next Thursday. Make sure you read the instructions. And I forgot what I wrote for the instructions. I was going to tell you, but hello?
Are you allowed to start and submit the assignment to next week, or do you want us to wait?
You can submit it anytime.
Okay.
For your final assignment, though, due at the end of the semester, if you do something like that and submit early, you'll get a 10% bonus, but
Oh.
not now.
Okay.
But later you will. Okay? Okay? Have a good week, okay? Yeah. Thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to conclude. And we'll see some of you tomorrow. Yeah, maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow for the movie. Great. Okay, I'm going to save the notes. And we will wrap things up. Each and every one of us always has a choice. That looks like Lord of the Rings. It looks like, yeah, looks like the Shire and, the Hobbits. Lord of the Rings. Okay, let me shut my microphone.